Hello and welcome to Daisy Moon's video of how to put together our fantastic pumpkin caddy. It makes a great Halloween decoration with an LED tea light inside, or you can fill it full of sweeties for your trick-or-treaters. First step is to put the lantern together. So the lantern is made of segments. Each segment has a flat face and a living hinge section. So the pegs on the flat face section match up with notches on the living hinge section. As you can see, I'm carefully matching them up. It is a bit fiddly, but it's worth taking your time to make sure that they really click in properly, so there's no gaps between them for light to slip out when you put that LED tea light in there. There we go, so once all the pegs are in the notches, it makes a really lovely curve. We're going to put this section into the lantern, so I've already started putting it together. We have an upward facing notch on the section that I've just made. It matches with a downward facing notch on the lantern, and they click together to make a really nice V-shaped joint. So I'm going to put the face on the other side of the segment that I've just made. It's easier doing this when the segment isn't on the lantern. So the first section I put on had an upward facing slot. I'm now going to alternate and put a face with a downward facing slot in it. It just helps to make sure that we don't have any segments that end up with two upward slots together or two downward slots together, because they won't click into place and then you won't be able to make your pumpkin. So I'm taking my time to make sure that the pegs really match up with those notches. There's no gaps so that light can't escape from the areas that you don't want it to when you put that LED tea light in there. It's worth taking a bit of time to do this properly, and it's really going to make a difference to the way that your pumpkin looks overall. So there we have it, we've got one complete segment ready to put in our lantern. On one side it's got an upward facing slot, on the other side it's got a downward facing slot. And here's another view of how we put those pegs into the notches on the living hinge. I know you're seeing this quite a lot, but it's probably the most important bit of the build. It's the bit that you do the most often, and it's really worth getting it right so that you get that nice load pumpkin shape. So now we're putting the last phase of the pumpkin in. This you really do have to do in situ, unlike the other segments where I showed you them sort of separated from the lantern. Only because it's really fiddly, you'll end up trying to slot a section in with one side that's pointing upwards, one side that's pointing downwards. It's much easier to just do it in situ. So once again, I'm matching up those pegs on the face with the notches in the living hinge. And that'll form the basis of your lantern. You can see the lovely lobe sections with the lovely curves, and it's all ready to do the base. So the base comes in two sections. There's this inner rim which clips on to the pegs on the bottom of the segments of the lantern. It takes a little bit to line them all up, but once that side's in, it's much easier to do the top of the lantern. You don't need two people to make this lantern, but sometimes having an extra pair of hands can help on this fiddly set. It's probably the fiddliest bit of making the lantern, just to initially get those pegs lined up. Once that's done, the rest of it is much easier, I promise you. So there we have it, that inner rim is clipped into place. It's now time to put the outer layer of the base on top. This is much easier to clip on because we've already got that kind of structure in place, keeping the pegs in line. We haven't done so on this video, but we would glue both that inner rim section and this second layer for the base. It's just going to give you more structure, it's going to make your lantern more secure, and it's going to keep it from falling apart when you put in your tea light or your sweeties. So now we're repeating the same sort of steps with the top of the lantern. There's that inner layer, that inner rim layer, which is going to match up with the pegs on the top of the lantern sections now. This should be a little bit easier to line up because you've got the structure by having that sort of bottom section of the lantern in place already. The pegs should be held in place a little bit easier, and once again we would glue this section to the lantern just to give it a bit more security. I mean, you don't want your lantern falling apart when you're lifting it up by your handles. So now that inner rim is all clipped in, we're just going to put the second layer on top, and it's clipping in really easily because those pegs are held in place. We're now moving on to doing the lid of our pumpkin. So we've got the two pieces that form the handle, we've got some sections that form a cross on the top of the lid, that's the other half of the cross, and we're going to show you how we put those together now. The handle and these cross sections slip into the notches on the lid. We're putting one cross section in, then we're putting the second cross section in. Then we're going to put that handle in. So we're matching up those pegs with those notches again, giving it a bit of a wiggle so it fits in nicely. We're going to flip that lid over so we can secure everything on the back side. So now there are 2 layers to this part. These 2 layers form the locking mechanism as well as keeping everything in place. We're going to put the first layer on nice and tightly, making sure that the pegs stick through. We're now going to take the second layer. It's not going to go directly on top of the first layer. It's going to go twisted ever so slightly, as you can see. That's going to form the locking mechanism of the lid. These U-shaped pieces are going to lock the handle into place. They just slot in where the handle has poked through into that lid. They clip into place, making sure that the handle doesn't fall off when you're carrying your lantern. So you can see Ben's clipped in one side, he's now going to clip in the other side. And that handle isn't going anywhere, it's nice and secure and snug. So on the last section of making our pumpkin caddy now, we're working on the base. At the moment I'm gluing on the layer which shows you how to lock and unlock the base, making sure that there's lots of glue on there so it doesn't come off. I'm lining up the slots in the glue section with the slots on the base, making really sure that they line up carefully and that they match. Ben's just double checking it for me. And now we're going to put some holding pegs into place. They help make sure that all the segments are lined up nice and neatly and all those slots are held securely. These last 2 pieces form the locking mechanism and the space for the tea light on the base of your lantern. So I'm just gluing up the first layer, going to put lots of glue on there to make sure it's nice and secure, and then replacing it on top of those pegs. Doing the same with that second layer now, putting lots of glue on to make it sure it's nice and secure, and we're going to layer that on top, matching it up with the holding pegs again. just to show you that the lid locks into place. It's a bit fiddly because we're kind of doing it blind, but once you get in and you turn it, it's locked in place, it's not going anywhere. Same can be done for the bottom, that locks into place as well. Once it's in, once it's turned and secure, it isn't going anywhere, your tea light's not going to fall out, your sweets aren't going to fall out, and it's going to make one beautiful lantern. Just to show you that what can be locked can be unlocked as well. You can take that lid out so you can fill it up with sweeties again, and you can take that base out so that you can remove the LED light that you put in there. I hope this video has helped. Any questions, pop them in the comments below or drop us a message on our Facebook page. Thanks again. Have a lovely evening.